This week's adventure takes me south to Whakatane, which is the gateway to the volcano White Island and its surrounding fishery. White Island is an active volcano some 50 kilometres in a straight line from Whakatane river mouth. The trip is going to be an overnight one, so I've brought a few mates down with me to share the adventure. Cova Rose is going to act as our mothership and house us all for the 2 days as we go in search of some monster kingfish. The trip out to White Island is a long one and the wind was blowing 25 knots, so after a while I decided to come aboard Cova Rose to prepare the gear for catching live bait when we arrived.
How much line have you got? I need to move back a bit to sort
this. When we arrived at our anchorage for the night, there were flying fish everywhere. They don't stay alive too well in the bait tank, but are still reasonable dead baits. What we really wanted though was some jack mackerel as live baits, so we baited up and fished through the night. Despite our best efforts and only 2 hours sleep, the live bait was simply not biting. Morning was soon upon us, and it was time to get fed, rigged and ready for what was going to be a long day of jigging. With the gear ready to go, it was time to get on the wave runner and head out to the fishing spot.
Wind's blowing about 20 knots, so have to say it's nice to have the Cova Rose with me. Certainly wouldn't want to be out here on my own, but the forecast is for it to die down during the day, so we're hoping to get into that monster kingfish.
Not long after we arrived, the sister ship showed up and immediately hooked up on a fish. Things were looking promising.
Hooked up on the jig right next to another boat, next to Enchanter. They've got one on, there's some nice sign on the sounder. We're onto one. It's the way to start the morning. Oh. In about 60 metres of water, it's really pulling hard over a bit of reef. Really got to work to keep them off the reef. And in these conditions, that's not easy.
Meanwhile, the boys on board had hooked up as well.
Here we go now. Got some nice colour coming in. Looks like a nice one. It's not going to be the 30 kilo monster just yet, but it's looking pretty respectable. Whoa. he is. Oh. Around the 16 kilo mark probably.
Not a bad one. 2 hours into it, it's pretty small, but anyway, we'll take it for the first one.
Woo! Pretty extreme conditions. Still blowing 20 knots. Oh, I think I'm hit. Yep. Got hit then on the drop. Felt the jig stop. It just grabbed it. It's only about 10 metres down. I don't think it's very big. Doesn't feel very big yet anyway. You never quite know with these kingies. I can see them.
This one was just a little one though, and it was the start of what then became a very quiet morning.
I just flick the hook out, release them. The island behind me is called White Island. It's where we stayed the night last night, and it's the area that we're fishing around today. White Island is renowned for monster kingfish. That's why we're here, that's what we're targeting. Just to the kind of west of White Island are some rocks called volcano rocks. That's where we are now. Pretty much some rocks that stick up out of the water with a good reef system right around it. So there's plenty of options for chasing big fish. The weather can get pretty gnarly. It's calmed down a bit now. It was blowing 20 knots this morning and 20 knots when we slept there last night. Couldn't get any live bait, so we're jigging and we're using the occasional dead flying fish. Let's get back into it. There's not long to go. See if we can get one.
In an attempt to attract a bite, I decided to throw a stick bait around. A stick bait is a surface lure, so is working a different depth of the water column than the jigs are. When things go quiet with one method of fishing, it's always worth trying something different to try and change your luck. In this case though, the kingies remained tight-lipped, so we decided to try changing spots.
How's it feel to be letting the fish go?
Oh, well, you know, practice makes perfect, I suppose. But at the end of the day, she's just a little rat again. As you can see, she's just come there. Trying to break the rod tip. Yeah, fair enough. Another small one. Another small one, but hey, it's a bit of practice. That's how we're going to do it. Fish all over the show at different depths, but really struggling to find some big ones. Using a 400 gram Black Magic tail weighted jig. I've gone with silver because there were quite a lot of flying fish around last night. So flying fish are around, kingies like flying fish, so that's what I'm using as the jig. It's now 12:15. We've been fishing since 6, only had a couple hours sleep and haven't caught much at all, so we've shifted spots. A lot of sign here. So we'll have a little jig, see what happens.
Gordon the Decky tried his luck with one of the flying fish we'd caught during the night and hooked up to a nice sized kingfish that had obviously had a troubled youth, with most of its dorsal fin missing.
So, what do you reckon it is, Dion?
I really wouldn't have a clue, actually, to be fair. It had a bit of a nod, but I wouldn't think it's going to be a snapper. Snapper, definitely not.
Australia has been munched by something.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, look at that shark. Jesus Christ. Look at that, man, the shark was.
As the day wore on, the weather started to really improve, and it looked like the fish may have started to come on as well. With a 3-hour journey back to dock, time was ticking on our adventure. The boys on the boat had all but given up, but I was determined to get that kingfish we had come for.
Come on. Oh, yep, fish on. Good one. Been fishing all day. We haven't had a bite for probably about 4 hours. We've gone back and forth between spots. Oh. Came onto some nice sign, and I dropped the jig down. The sounder, the Lowrance just went red, and hooked up to something that feels quite nice. Oh, I've just backed my drag off just a couple of clicks because I'm in 100 metres of water, and I've hooked this guy at 40. So he's actually up to about 30 now, 25. And I backed the drag off because I know I'm a long way from terrain. Kingfish are renowned for trying to take you into terrain, into the rocks, but I know I'm a long way from it, and I don't want to put stress on the gear. By backing the drag off a couple of clicks, it just takes that bit of stress off if he gives a burst, which kingfish are renowned to do. When they see the ski, he'll give a burst. He's a nice one, nice bit of weight to him. You see there, that's why we backed that drag off. He's a big fat kingfish, up around the 18, 19 kilo mark. The hard part now is to get him under control, so got him between my legs. Gonna whack the reel into free spool, put the ratchet on. That way if he drops over the side while he's still hooked up, I've still got him on. We've got a few boys on the boat, so I'm going to keep this one. We haven't had many today, so that's the only reason I'm putting my hand in his gills. Otherwise you should never put your hand in a fish's gills if you want to release it. And you can see here a prime example where you always keep the weight on your hook. If I let that go loose, that's just dropped out of his mouth. We've only got about 20 minutes before we have to head back to dock. Seems to be a feature with our shows this season. We come right down to the wire before we get those nice fish, but we've got him. He's going to go on ice, the boys are going to be fed, and we can head home happy.